Mark Hemming was today recovering in the John Hunter Hospital, making plans for his third birthday party next weekend. Yesterday, his father thought it was a birthday Mark wouldn't be around to celebrate.
I thought I'd killed him.
Brian Hemming was taking his two sons for a ride on a tractor while working on a relative's property at Minmai.
I had my youngest son sitting on my lap and he'd sort of slipped down and I had hold of Mark and I sort of let go of him to fix Wayne up, and as I pulled Wayne up with my left hand I bumped Mark sort of like that and knocked him off balance and he fell off the step he was standing on.
To Brian's horror, the tractor wheel ran over Mark. Although he has the tyre marks imprinted on his body, Mark remarkably survived the ordeal without a broken bone or any serious injuries. The Hemmings hope this incident serves as a warning to other families on the land.
There's always a danger side in anything that's fun, so you just got to be careful because their lives are too precious.
The men from the Lego Monaco, the angry buzz of 100cc industrial engines. On a track dampened against the dust, 70 of the state's best have been battling it out, from the rookies, 7-year-olds, up to the seniors and the open class. A minor pile-up soon turns into a scramble, firstly to get out of the way, then to get going again. The early tips.
It's class. Brian Britton's looking very good in the club and heavy. Larry Wosley in the senior national.
Provisional results, Tari's Larry Page leads the senior national class. Terry Clifton from Port Macquarie was ahead in the senior national light division. Tari's Luke Austin heads the rookies just in front of Stephen Cotterill from Port Macquarie, and another Tari driver, Alan Brown, leads the international class.
"22 nations, over 400 competitors, thousands of support staff and spectators, and a reported injection of around $10 million has been Cessnock's lot for the past week and a bit, as it played host to the international six-day enduro. It's been a week of tension, drama and excitement, from the march past down Vincent Street last Monday to yesterday's finale, the motocross section, which decided the medal and trophy winners. But the real winner was Cessnock.
Apart from the financial benefit, which I suppose is probably the most important, to me it's meeting new friends, speaking with people from other cultures. It's lifted our spirits, it's taken us away from our everyday problems, and we've learned that there's other things in the world besides Cessnock.
But most importantly, the competitors were brilliant. Italy reigning supreme, winning the team's trophy just in front of Sweden and Spain, and weren't they happy? Individually, Pierfranco Maraglia was the winner of the 80cc category by the narrowest of margins from countryman Gianmarco Rossi. Jeff Nilsson of Sweden dominated the 125cc division from day one and was a worthy winner from Passeri of Italy. In the hotly contested 250cc's, Joachim Hedendal also was a deserved champ, edging out Paolo Pellegra of Italy by only 3 points, Shane Watts of Australia finishing 5th. Mario Rinaldi gave Italy another win in the 350 four-stroke class, and he was head and shoulders above the rest. Not surprisingly, Italy again were successful in the 500cc's. Giovanni Sala 42 points in front of American Rodney Smith, with Sala's teammate Fabio Farioli winning the over 500cc class. But the grand champion of the meeting went to Giovanni Sala, who only lost 6.09 points over 6 days of the toughest competition imaginable. The mundane task of cleaning up after 6 days of rugged competition in the 67th International Enduro is well underway, and Cessnock is slowly returning to normal. The task of cleaning up is enormous, but there is one underlying feeling here, that Cessnock really has turned on a spectacular show for the last few days.
I think it's really opened the eyes of Cessnock and the Hunter Valley and Newcastle area to see the crowd that was at the final motocross yesterday was outstanding, and to see that we're not all Harley riders.
All the reports from all the teams, all the team managers and officials, it's been nothing but positive. I'm told that this was the best event in 20 years.
Beautiful people. They've all been in this morning giving us kisses and saying hooray, and it's been lovely. Very nice.
But the measure of any event's success or failure comes from those outside the area.
You know, all of us have said it's a tremendous show they put on here. It'll take another country a lot to beat what Australia have done here.
It was the first time that it was in the 6th day, so it's really nice to see it.
And the Swiss team happy with their performance?
Yeah. Well, we got all the drive through, so that's good enough.
Very good, very good. You know, whoever we asked, they were friendly, they were helpful, they came over to us to help us out, the things we couldn't find out, and terrific, really terrific. Very professional, really. For a first-time event in a country like this, it's unbelievable what the people have done here.
Parks and Wildlife officers only completed the boardwalk last week. Today they were securing the remains of the access ramp against more attacks by vandals.
What we're going to have to do is virtually board it up and stop the public from walking down it. We'll have to have safety netting because it is at this point in time dangerous.
Vandals ripped up dozens of deck planks and managed somehow to steal a 3-metre prefabricated staircase, leaving a dangerous drop. The ramp was the first stage of a Parks and Wildlife project to upgrade the beach. A second boardwalk was planned, dunes were to be reshaped and bitu bush destroyed. But construction estimates will now be rethought as bolts holding the remaining structure are welded into place. It could be months before more funding is available to restore the boardwalk, money which should have been spent on future stages of the project.
We haven't got the funds now to continue on, and we'll certainly be having a serious look at any future works on Dudley Beach.
The theft would have required several people and a large vehicle. Anyone seeing suspicious activity on the beach in the past week is asked to contact police or the Parks and Wildlife Service. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Foreign turf did not deter Oxley High in its tough battle against the Mount Maria school from Brisbane for a finals berth in the Bill Turner Soccer Cup. At the hallowed Newcastle Soccer Ground, Spears Point Park, Oxley powered its way to an exciting win. Locked at 2-2 at the full-time hooter, the game went into extra time. Oxley's Brent Moffat finished off a spirited attack to slam home the winning goal. Jason Leslie, Troy Adams and Darren De Schmidt scored the other 3 goals. Mount Maria was just as determined and even hit the lead at one stage. But Oxley too strong. It managed to forge ahead for tonight's final against Bossley Park from Sydney. The winner will hold the Commonwealth Bank Bill Turner Cup for the next 12 months.
Owner of Peninsula Cycle Centre, Max LaRue, was inundated with hopeful faces today. Applicants appeared on his doorstep this morning applying for jobs that Mr LaRue knew nothing about.
There was an ad in there for factory workers, 20 wanted. Building bicycles, good pay and conditions, superannuation, something else.
People came from as far away as Sydney.
One gentleman who came down from YE had to borrow a car and borrow money for the petrol to get here. Now, if this person, whoever's done this, thinks that's funny, well, they've got a pretty warped sense of humour.
The applicants were just as bewildered as Mr LaRue, but they all accepted it as just another harsh reality in a recession.
They accept the fact they've been for another interview and they haven't got a job.
Education and Public Works officials, the Environmental Protection Authority and parents met today. The detoxification program means students would have to be moved out of Bullaroo, walls have to be gyprocked, the school repainted, buildings sealed underneath, and work carried out on the playground and roof.
Hopefully at the end of that we'll have a building which is easy to clean, which is free of lead, and which children can use in the future without any worry about picking up lead at school.
Students would be relocated to nearby Spears Point Primary for this year's final term. But parents fear the closure of Bullaroo will be permanent and are calling on Education Minister Virginia Chadwick for written assurance. They've also asked for letters from the other government departments involved.
If we can get those letters signed within a week, I think we will be ahead. But if there's no signatures, well, we'll be back to square one.
The plans will be put to a community vote on Monday night. Selena Buresti, NBN News.
There has been much speculation about the future of the Central Coast Area Health Service. It was proposed in May that it amalgamate with Royal North Shore in Sydney, and in July it was suggested the Hunter Area Health Service would absorb the Central Coast Board. But each case has been strongly denied by Health Minister Ron Phillips. He says Central Coast Area Health will remain an autonomous body. However, a review will be undertaken in December. That has spurred federal, state and local government representatives into action. Today at Gosford Hospital, they launched a petition which will be circulated to gain community opposition to any amalgamation proposal.
What we're looking for is the community to indicate to the government that they're totally unhappy with this proposal. They want their own run Central Coast Area Health Service. And what we're asking in the community, we want community clubs like sports clubs, the service clubs like Rotary, Apex, we want them to pick up the issue.
It's estimated that if there was a shake-up of area services, about $8 million could be saved. That's a carrot to tempt any minister, and according to member for the Entrance Grant McBride, it's feared it could be the start of privatisation.
You make the organisation big enough, you take away the local character of it, take away the support of the local community, and then you privatise the system. And that's what we're really scared about.
The boundaries have been extended by the Department of Transport. The changes mean a uniform cost structure will apply for all cab journeys in Newcastle and its environs.
People really only have to pay the fare that's showing on the taxi meter, whereas previously people had to pay the fare for the taxi to return to the nearest Newcastle and District Transport District boundary.
The changes have taken into account the tourists flying into Williamtown, as well as residential and industrial developments. The new boundaries are a welcome change for passengers. A fare to the Williamtown RAF base, for instance, was $39. This has now been reduced by around $8. Taxis around Toronto and Williamtown will now be classed as metropolitan and not country. The cabbies at Williamtown are pleased because they are now allowed to operate in Newcastle.
Before we'd be restricted to finishing at 9 o'clock at night. Well, now once that happens we can go and work in town. So it's virtually given us a 24-hour licence.
The newly formed seat of Paterson was the target of the former Science Minister's visit to the Hunter. The last state election showed the area up as a marginal seat, and it's one Labor is looking to for the next federal election with their candidate Bob Horn.
If the trend is running our way in the federal election, it's a seat that we would certainly hope to win.
Mr Jones was out wooing the grey vote at the Green Hills nursing home. The charismatic ALP national president then gave an address to the Maitland Chamber of Commerce on the theme making the transition towards the global economy. Mr Jones was attempting to reassure voters in the tough economic times.
Probably in the last decade, we've gone through a greater economic restructuring than we've had for any 30-year period in our history. And that reconstruction is painful. The transition certainly hasn't been an easy one, but it was inescapable. And in the medium to long term, I think it will be very much to the national benefit.
The parade had all the colour and soul of a jazz festival anywhere in the world. About 50 musicians and several hundred followers converged on Newcastle's Town Hall this morning to blow in the festival with traditional ragtime revelries. It's one of the highlights on the Australian jazz calendar, drawing top bands from across the nation and plenty more enthusiasts from equally far and wide. The music continued all day with a roaring 20s night planned in the Town Hall this evening, followed by a jazz gospel service in the city's Christchurch Cathedral tomorrow morning.
The two fighters had met on 3 previous occasions, the last time PV took the title from Cornett, but last night Cornett was in awesome form. Midway through the second round, a crushing right sent PV to the floor. From that moment on, Cornett threw leather at will, with PV not offering any resistance. Cornett's promoter Marty Roan says the new champ is now in line for a crack at the WBC title, and on last night's form, he's some chance.
The crew of the Royal Sovereign Justice Retzer was relieved to step ashore today. Although they had enough food and water on board, Peter Harper from Sydney admits he was worried.
Will I see land again? Will I get to touch land again?
to be honest, yeah. It's scary.
The three men left Sydney last Tuesday on what should have been an overnight trip. 4 days later, they still hadn't reached their destination of Newcastle. They'd been drifting off the Newcastle-Port Stephens coastline for several days. The yacht's mainsail was ripped, the motor wasn't working and there was no radio on board. Luckily, a trawler spotted a flare from the yacht this morning. Police-launched Stackpool towed it into Newcastle Harbour.
They were extremely lucky not to be blown out to sea, and in situations with the wind blowing offshore as it is, they could have ended up 60, 70 miles out and no one would have found them.
Boats which travel 2 nautical miles offshore must carry a radio receiver. The penalty for not doing so is an $80 fine. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The horse-drawn vehicle E-competition is broken into 3 sections: presentation and dressage, where freedom of pace, suppleness, lightness, ease of movement and correct positioning of the horse on the move are judged. The competitor is also judged on his or her style, accuracy and general command of the horses. A second phase of a 30-kilometre marathon tests the horses and drivers' endurance, and to follow that, an obstacle course, where rigs only have a 20-centimetre clearing between the cones. This test of speed and precision is to be completed without knocking the balls from the top of the cones. Competition continues tonight, and then tomorrow the final tests will be held.
The finals of the annual competition were held in the Armidale Mall this morning. The object, to create a crane from strips of spaghetti strong enough to hold a 500-gram weight. But that's not all. The structure had to weigh next to nothing. Despite its novelty, the competition is a serious exercise, with schoolchildren from all over the north trying their luck.
Once again, the Institution of Engineers Northern Group and the Institute of Municipal Engineering put the competition together, and we hope to have a more challenging and exciting structure for the competitors next year.
But the winner of the Open and Year 11 and 12 section was an old hand. Michael Edmonds from Duval High took out last year's competition, a secret recipe perhaps.
I used Veta oil again, same as last year. The glue was a bit different, it was 5-minute araldite, which made it a bit harder. It took longer to dry.
Winners in the other categories included the B team from Armidale High in the Year 7 to 10 section and Mark Bryant from Glen Innes in the primary schools competition.
They were all there, from the Holdens of EH variety and others to Minis and a thumping big Trans Am Mustang, all hell-bent on getting up the hill faster than the next bloke. For some like Mark Stewart of Charlestown, it was a sudden and expensive stop. To some results, and in the plus 4.2 litre division, a win for Glenn Burke of Wyong in the time of 39.22 seconds. Jack Fraser from Coonabarabran won the under 2 litre class, but the fastest of them all was Scott Hoy from Tamworth, who raced up the mountain in a blistering 34.78 seconds.
The 5th annual Glenray picnic races were a relaxing way for many families to spend Father's Day. It was similar to a small country show. There were a host of activities including a cattle dog demonstration, tug of war and gumboot throwing competitions. The 7 race program started at 10:30, only interrupted by a barbecue lunch. The winner of the Glenray Cup was a quarter horse called Alf, ridden by female jockey Kim Lloyd. Organisers say the event will be on again next year. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Teachers at Belmont High were sorting through the remains today of a year's hard work. Fire units were called to the school at around 1 this morning, an art room well alight. The 35-year-old timber building was gutted by the fire. Year 10 and 11 major artworks destroyed. Adjoining classrooms were affected by smoke and water damage. The fire is believed to have been deliberately lit.
If some of the people who do these things could really see the effect of what they do, maybe they'd think again.
The Department of School Education has noted a disturbing trend of school vandalism. This is the third incident in the last 3 months, following attacks at Katara and Tanambit. Private security firms do patrol some schools, but Assistant Director General Alan Beard has called for more support from the public.
I think the answer is to encourage local communities as far as they can to be vigilant. I guess it's a bit like Neighbourhood Watch. But we've had a program where we've encouraged school communities to watch their school.
Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The Rosellas have gone through season 92 undefeated, and they weren't about to be denied at the last hurdle. Lakes United came up against a West side hell-bent on reversing last year's shock grand final loss, and it didn't take long for West to stamp their authority. A first-half field goal gave them an 11-point buffer at the break. The writing was on the wall for Lakes. The Seagulls' one and only chance came late in the first half. Over the line, but disallowed. In the second half, Lakes opened up, West probing, finding gaps almost at will. The Rosellas piled on 4 second-half tries and completed the shutout, the final score 33-0.
Early today, prices had reached $14,000, but higher quality beasts later on were expected to go upwards towards the record levels of 2 years ago. Given the condition of the rural economy, with prices depressed for most commodities and drought gripping 3/4 of the state, the prices reflect the optimism of producers and confidence in the future of the industry.
I think there's a better draft of bulls here than we've seen for some time. The catalogue isn't quite as big, but the quality is certainly better than we've seen, and prices thus far reflecting that quality.
Tomorrow, the Poll Herefords will be judged and then sold on Friday.
This has traditionally been a very strong Poll Hereford sale. In the Hereford breed, there is much more competition through the country with private on property sales. The Poll Herefords don't have quite so much competition, so many of the better bulls tend to come here to Glen Innes, and it's well known for that, and they will, I believe, be well received.
Buyers from across the state converge on Glen Innes for the week to inspect stock from commercial and stud farms. While Australian wine has a world-class reputation, it's only a small drop in world sales, taking just 1% of the market. And so a chance to grab a bigger share of European interest represents a huge increase.
I think the potential is by the rest of the decade a five-fold increase. I think that's what the industry is looking at. We're $200 million total exports at the present moment. We're looking at $1 billion by the end of the decade.
Professor Terry Lee from the Australian Wine Research Institute is just back from negotiations in Europe trying to seal the deal. Speaking to a meeting of vignerons at the Curry TAFE, Professor Lee said there was one important aspect to the talks, leaving European names off all Aussie wines.
Over a period of time, we will phase out the use of names like Burgundy and Champagne and Chablis, which the industry has been using on some products for 100 years or so here.
It's said to be one of the most significant trade agreements between the EEC and Australia. The name changes could mean initial confusion for local consumers, finding the new classification for their favourite wines. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
In the last 12 months, the Australia Telescope near Narrabri has attracted more than 15,000 visitors. In a bid to boost these numbers, as well as attracting more people to Narrabri, the telescope is promoting its own visitors radio transmission service.
This is a test transmission of Australia Telescope information radio on 88 megahertz from the Paul Wild Observatory, the heart of the Australia Telescope facility, located 25 kilometres west of Narrabri.
Still at the testing stage, it's hoped the message recorded on computer chip will be fully operational on 88 megahertz in a matter of weeks.
It's very useful for this type of tourist information, and a number of communities have them already. There's one at Cessnock people may have noticed driving through, and at Foster. We're not far behind, and we're very keen to get it underway. We want to encourage people to come out to the Visitors Centre, learn about the work of CSIRO and about the Australia Telescope.
Signs will be erected within a 15-kilometre radius around Narrabri, informing tourists about the service. Politicians and students assembled today for a ceremony that should have taken place more than 2 decades ago, the official opening of the school. It's a comprehensive school with an emphasis on design technology. There are 27 such institutions in New South Wales. Classes began here in February 1970. New buildings were added in 1973 and 1975, and recently about $500,000 was spent upgrading the library and administration area. So why the delay in officially opening the high school? A spokesperson from the School Education Department believes the formality was overlooked because of the staged construction of the school. Today, the long overdue official opening was performed by Education Minister Virginia Chadwick.
And at long last, after all of this time, I declare the school and its extensions officially open.